What's going on, guys? Welcome on into Second and Short. My name is Tyler Lauder and he is Aaron Ben, and we are back for Fantasy Friday. Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're just like a couple hours removed from a great Jaguars loss, so I'm starting my day off great.
Yeah, for whoever it was in the comment section last week about all Thursday night football games are great games. Where are you at now?
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars, everyone's kind of been hyping them up, and justifiably so. They looked good the first 2 weeks. Gardner Minshew looked like he's picking up where he left off last season. And then, like, they got that great undrafted free agent rookie in James Robinson, and then this week they went out and just looked really not very good against the Dolphins team, who also wasn't projected to look very good this year, and so far hasn't. So it's kind of a surprising result. I'm not going to complain. It is what it is.
Yeah, what I found the most interesting from this was the fact that the Jags outgained the Dolphins on offense. Starting field position is such a key factor in how well teams can dominate a game and can win a game. And we saw the Dolphins take advantage of good field position. Ryan Fitzpatrick was only sacked one time, but they only lost like 4 yards. His QBR was a 97.2. His quarterback rating was 133. Like he played well. He was 18 for 20. 2 touchdowns through the air. He also added another touchdown on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't throw for a whole lot of yards, but he kept the ball moving. I mean, they kept getting first downs. He knew when to pick up yards with his legs. The running game was going pretty well. So yeah, it's a pretty good overall game, I would say, by them.
Yeah, and although the Dolphins got the win and moved to 1-2, the Thursday night fantasy football player of the night is running back James Robinson. He was pretty efficient. He was a heavy target. He only had 11 carries, but again, they were down early in this game, and by halftime it was 21-7. So, running the ball almost goes out the window. But still, he had 11 carries for 46 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did break an 11-yard run there in the game. But the most important thing was he had 6 targets. And of those 6 targets, he hauled in 6 receptions for 83 yards, including a big 24-yard play.
Yeah, he's looking like a pretty good all-around back. I mean, if you haven't picked him up off the waiver wire, he's probably not going to be available after this week already, so you're going to want to try and get him already. I picked him up last week after the game against the Titans, and looking to see what he's going to do the rest of the season.
Yeah, more than likely he is already picked up on a roster. His ownership over the past couple of weeks has skyrocketed. Before the season started, right when he got named the starter, I think he got picked up in about 5% of leagues. And over the past 2 weeks, he is officially now rostered in 88% of leagues on ESPN. So I mean, if you're in the 12%, the lucky 12%, why haven't you already picked him up? But let's move on from Thursday night football and let's talk about the upcoming Sunday football of week 3 in the NFL. And let's talk about some, guys we think are going to be studs this weekend, guys we think are going to be duds this weekend, and maybe we'll throw in a couple sleeper picks that we think have a good chance to outplay their projection and surprise. So why don't you lead us off first with the first stud of the week, Aaron?
All right, well, my first stud, I feel, is Darius Slayton. If you remember week 1, he's been on my team, first of all, since week 1. Week 1, he had over 100 yards, had 6 catches, 2 touchdowns. So he performed pretty well. Last week, not so great, only 33 yards. But this week, with Sterling Shepard going out, I think Darius Slayton is in prime position to come in and kind of take over the game, get more targets. Last week, he only had 6 targets the whole game. I think he can really come in and start coming into his own. It showed a lot of promise last year, his rookie year. And this year, I'm expecting big things from him. And this week, playing against San Francisco, that team has just been devastated by injuries, like we talked about on our review episode on, when was that, Monday? All of their pass rush pretty much is gone. Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas is out. We're talking about Richard Sherman isn't playing. I mean, people kind of been shitting on him since the Super Bowl, but he's still smart veteran cornerback, one of their best defensive players. So I think Darius Slayton should be able to feast on them.
And yeah, so far in the season, the 49ers have given up 347 yards to wide receivers. They've given up 37 receptions. All that is good for about 80 fantasy points among all receivers they've played against Arizona and the New York Jets. And, the big factor there, we have to remember, that is DeAndre Hopkins' stellar week 1, but they actually gave up more fantasy points in week 2. And right now, the Giants just lost Saquon Barkley, and it's hard for me to believe that they're going to be a type of team that is going to want to continue to run the ball over and over. Nice little crafty running back who, can play in the passing game and can also run up the middle. We're going to see what happens with newly signed Devonta Freeman. Daniel Jones has got to throw to somebody. And obviously he's still got Golden Tate there, but I think Slayton is one of those guys that can take the top off of defenses. Routes, he's able to play in the slot or play outside. And I think that he is going to feast. If I was going to put my money down on anybody to score a touchdown out of these receivers between Slayton and Tate, I'm going to take Slayton on this. We could all see an uptake in Evan Ingram, but the 49ers are not the defensive team that we saw in years past. And I think somebody like Darius Slayton, who right now on PPR rankings is the 15th best wide receiver in the league with 35 fantasy points so far in the season. So I agree. I think he is in for a big week. And if you're trying to decide between him or another guy, maybe you couldn't play DJ Chark last night, for the Jags. Let's go ahead and slot Slayton in. He's owned in a lot of leagues, but if you can somehow get him for cheap, I would recommend doing that as well.
Right. Moving on, who's your pick for stud of the week, Tyler?
I'm going to be staying into the exact same game, and I'm going to be talking about the running back position, and that is San Francisco 49ers running back Jerick McKinnon. Now, you already listed all the injuries that are out for their defense, but on offense, they're already going to be out Mostert and Coleman, and as well as that, we don't even know if Jimmy G is going to be able to play. Right now, he hasn't been practicing this week. It looks like Nick Mullins might be getting the start at quarterback, and right there just tells me something. What is somebody what do backup quarterbacks like to do?
Hand the ball off.
They like to hand the ball off, and if they don't hand the ball off, they like to do little quick out passes, out routes and everything to their running backs, and they just, check down city. And I think that on the opposite side, when the 49ers have the ball, I think Jerick McKinnon is going to feast. The competition for him isn't heavy there. There's not a lot of other running backs to compete with. He's finally healthy, so we can actually, get to see this explosiveness from him. It's really him and Jeff Wilson Jr. is really all it is, and then obviously there's Kyle Juszczyk, who's there. But this Giants defense does not scare me at all. Like if you have a chance to play a reliable 49er, I would.
Jerick McKinnon, we know basically what he is. We've seen him throughout the years from when he was at Minnesota. He's a shifty guy. He's not a power back. He's kind of more like a cut guy, likes to juke, make moves and stuff. He had that huge, 55-yard run on 3rd and 31 last week. So we know he's got big play potential. And the Niners, they have pretty decent offensive line. I think he's going to have a pretty decent game.
Yeah, so far in the year, the Giants have given up over 45 fantasy points to running backs. We saw, last week, David Montgomery had a huge week. And the week before that, we saw, James Conner and Benny Snell kind of get the workload for Pittsburgh. They haven't given up a rushing touchdown yet. However, we've already talked about how McKinnon can also be, deadly in the receiving game. He only has 3 receptions to date right now, good for 20 receiving yards, but he has both a rushing and a receiving touchdown. And we have to remember, this is with them having like a 3-headed back, situation. And so he is one of those guys that even though he's not going to look like a workhorse, he's going to get enough fantasy points to stay relevant. I mean, he's averaging just under 15 fantasy points per game in PPR. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finds the back of the end zone a couple times this game.
Exactly. He's not going to be your number one starting running back like throughout the whole season, but I think he's a great option if you have a team on a bye or if one of your starting running back is injured or something like that.
Alrighty, now let's move on to our fantasy duds of the weekend. These are going to be players that we think that, I mean, obviously if you're forced to start them due to injuries, you got to, but realistically, just leave them out, no matter how good they are. Last week, I said to be careful starting Deshaun Watson, and I mean, yeah, he put up about 14.9 fantasy points, but that is below his average. That's less than he was projected. And I just think that there are safer options out there. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be kind of showing you guys who to not play because they're not as safe as other options. So Aaron, give us your first dud of the week 3 for fantasy football.
All right. Well, my pick for dud of the week is, you mentioned him before, Devontae Freeman. He was recently picked up, I mean like just a few days ago, picked up by the Giants to replace Saquon Barkley, who's out for the year with a torn ACL. And I got to admit, I picked him up too because Saquon's on my team. And I need a replacement quick. Niners defense, their defensive line is still pretty solid. We talked about how they're going to go after them in the past. Darius Slayton's going to have a bigger game. I don't think they're going to run the ball as much. And even when they do, I'm not sure that Devontae Freeman is the right guy to come out and suddenly get over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked really, really good back in the day, 2015, 2016 with the Falcons. But, I mean, had injury problems the last few years. Looked kind of a shell of his former self last year at 3.6 yards per carry. Add the fact that maybe he's not in the best shape right now. I don't know what his workout routine was like during this offseason, but he's not been playing the first couple of weeks. I wouldn't trust him to come in and be the one to save my fantasy team this year.
I mean, no, and he's 28 years old now. He was injured last year for a couple games, and the year before that, he missed almost the entire season. And I think that, I mean, maybe all this time off will help him. We don't know. It's really, in my opinion, injuries are just a matter of time type of thing. But we did see a drop in his play last year where he was only averaging 3.6 yards per carry. He only got 2 touchdowns. And it just wasn't a good year for him overall on a Falcons team that is always good on offense with Matt Ryan. And I think I agree with you. I don't think that him coming over to the Giants, at least not this week, is going to be something that you're going to want to trust. I think I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again, that Deion Lewis is probably the safer option. And I just, there's a lot more running backs out there that you can go for and actually have a chance at playing this week instead of a guy that you really shouldn't be starting in your lineup until you know his role.
And even with that being said, even Deion Lewis, I'm kind of wary of starting. Like you said, more of kind of like a third down guy, pass catcher out of the backfield. Not someone I would really see starting for any length of time.
No, and right now he's projected to get about 6 carries, 23 yards, 1 reception, and I think right there, like 7 touches is probably a good number for him. I would be surprised if he eclipses 10 touches this week. Just look elsewhere at the running back spot. Even if you're hurting, there's other options.
Yeah, I mean, fellow Saquon Barkley owners, I feel your pain, but you got to move on.
Alrighty, on to my dud of week 3. And I'm going to be moving up to the quarterback position. Now, this was a very hard one for me because I like a lot of these guys coming in and filling in for some injured players, and I like a lot of the matchups we see. But there's one team that I just don't know if things aren't clicking, if maybe it's the coach. Everybody thinks it's the coach, by the way. This is a spoiler before I even say the name. You can guess right now. Or if maybe this quarterback just can't get it done. And that's going to be New York Jets quarterback Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold so far in the year has been underwhelming. I mean, we're in his third year, and it just seems like it's not clicking, and I don't know what it is about him, but maybe I'm wrong right here in dogging on him, and it is completely Adam Gase. But even if he is to play decent this week, they're running into the Indianapolis Colts, who right now are the number one pass defense in the NFL. So far through 2 games, they have only allowed 286 passing yards. And that's to Kirk Cousins and Minshew, who actually had a more efficient game. But, I just don't see Sam Darnold being able to put together anything against his Indy team that Kirk Cousins couldn't do,
Not only is Indy's defense looking very strong this year, they're pretty much good at all the defensive positions, but Sam Darnold just is not looking like he's got what it takes to come in and be this 300-yard, 3-touchdown passer every week. I mean, he's last couple of weeks had 21 completions, around 65 completion percentage. A franchise quarterback isn't a guy that throws for 200 yards and a touchdown and an interception. And that's basically what he's been doing his whole career. The upside that I see, and you mentioned it, is that I tend to blame the coaching as well. We saw what Ryan Tannehill was able to do the second he got out from under Adam Gase's wing.
Another reason why you don't want to play him is because he's down so many weapons. We already know Le'Veon Bell is on that short leash, short term, whatever, IR. He's out Jamison Crowder this week. Denzel Mims, his rookie, still isn't playing. Rashad Perriman is doubtful. Like, his top 4 targets are all going to be not there, more than likely. And so it's just look elsewhere. Like, if you need to, just go onto your waiver wire, and I guarantee this is probably where Sam Darnold is anyways. But if you do have him on deeper leagues, you know what? Just go look elsewhere. Go sign Teddy Bridgewater. Go sign Mitch Trubisky, Justin Herbert. I mean, there's plenty of options that you can go and start elsewhere that will get you better results and will have more long-term value in this season than just week 3. Now, let's shift this over and let's go into a fun topic of sleepers. And now these sleepers, I really feel like we're not going to hit the nail on the head with them, because a sleeper is like all in the eye of the beholder. For instance, your sleeper that we're going to talk about, I actually think very highly of this week. But for you, he's a little bit of a sleeper. And that's what I love about fantasy football and like how we can talk about it. So let's just jump on in. Let's talk about your sleeper of week 3 that you probably should be starting.
You mentioned that it really is kind of subjective. For a lot of people, this may seem like an obvious pick. And I kind of debated too, but I think for other people, it's not so obvious, and I'll explain why. I'm talking about Deontay Johnson, wide receiver for the Steelers. A lot of people still holding out hope for Juju, that Juju's going to come in and replicate the success he had when he was playing alongside Antonio Brown. Last year, wasn't really able to carry the load as the wide receiver 1 for the Steelers. I think part of that stemmed from him being basically their only target. But this year, Steelers have quite a few more targets. People are talking about Chase Claypool, who looked pretty good, had that long touchdown last week. But Deontay Johnson, if we're talking in terms of targets, he's getting more targets so far this year than Juju has gotten. Last week had 10 targets, this week 13 targets. Week 2, he went for almost 100 yards, had a touchdown. I think he's kind of establishing himself as that number 1 receiver. Within a couple weeks, he's going to be rostered, if not starting, in pretty much every league. And I think he is rostered in almost every league, but he'll be starting everywhere pretty soon here.
Yeah, on ESPN, he's right now rostered in over 87% of leagues. And I think why he's a sleeper is because the Houston Texans are an interesting defense when it comes to pass defense. They did pretty well last week, and they gave up a lot of points in week 1. But then again, you go and look at those teams, and it's like, oh, it's the Ravens who run it all the time. and the Chiefs who throw it all the time. So, like, of course, those make sense. So, like, we still don't know exactly what the Texans are. We just know that those two offenses, what they do and how well they do it. I think Big Ben is looking good. I think he likes to spread the ball around. We know this. And anybody from in their top 4 receivers, Schuster, Johnson, Claypool, or Washington, they're all going to get targets. They're all going to get looks. And I honestly think that Deontay Johnson is slowly into the position of number 1 wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I agree. From this point on, why did I show up blank? He's going to be started every week and will be producing mid to high end wide receiver 2 numbers all week, every week.
Yeah, so and this week, I mean, he's going up against the Texans. Texans, granted, they've gone up against 2 very, very good teams, but they're kind of feeling pretty down right now. I think he's going to take advantage of that. I think the Texans secondary has not looked great so far, so I think he's going to be able to come in and improve on what he's done the last couple weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, like when you talk about him, how some people are not 100% sold on him just quite yet. I know he's rostered everywhere, but I mean, when guys have such big boom of weeks where they score 20 plus fantasy points, some people start to have their doubts on whether or not it's a legit consistent thing and, going forward, or if it's one of those, shot in the pan 1 week, big boom and everything else is just going to plateau from there. But look out for Deontay Johnson going forward. If you can trade for him, you need to do so now. That's the best thing with these sleepers. Every week that we announce a sleeper, go out and try and trade for them immediately, because if you do not, they will not leave that other person's team for the rest of the year. And this will be the cheapest you can get them.
I agree completely. This is probably your last chance to pick them up. Who do you got for sleepers?
Now, of my sleeper, we're going to talk about the last position that we haven't talked about yet, and that is the tight end position. And the tight end position is always one of those ones that's top heavy. And every year, over the past 5 years, there's been more and more competition at tight end, where it's not just 2 or 3 heavy. It's kind of tiered into top 3, next 8, and we're seeing more guys step up. And my sleeper that I think you need to get a hold of before he starts getting picked up is tight end Drew Sample. 6'4", 258 out of Cincinnati. He's not exactly Joe Burrow's favorite target. However, so far over 2 weeks, the tight ends, they have about a 22% target share. They are constantly getting looked at by Joe Burrow. And not even if they're not getting looked at him, Joe Burrow's thrown the ball 97 times in 2 games. So the options are there for them. The targets are there for them. And speaking of targets, just last week, Sample caught 7 of 9 passes for 45 yards. And that right there is tremendous to me. Even if he didn't get a lot of yards, he's getting a lot of targets. And I'm going to ask it, and I'm going to ask this again and again and again, because it's going to be my thing, is what do I always say a young quarterback's best friend is?
The goofy sidekick who doesn't actually play on the team, but he has all the jokes.
Yes, exactly. I think they call those backup quarterbacks. But no, the tight end, yeah.
Especially with CJ Uzomah going out for the year with a torn Achilles, Drew Sample's going to come in. I think he's going to be his go-to guy, 3rd and short, check down passes out in the flat or over the middle. I think he's going to come in and could surprise a few people. Not you, of course, because you already picked him.
Yeah, going forward, he's going to be playing on the edge of tight end 1, and he's going to be anywhere from tight end 10 to tight end 16 consistently. And I just think with the Bengals still being a team that is on the up and up, and they're still building, that they are going to be down in a lot of games, and we've seen that they're not afraid to throw the ball. And they're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles this week, and the Eagles they're no slouch, but they're really not doing anything great. So far, there's been 4 receiving touchdowns by tight ends against them in 2 weeks, and yes, I know Tyler Higbee had 3 last week, but still, big athletic pass catching tight ends seem to be a problem for them, which is ironic because that's their best asset on offense as well. So you think they would know how to defend it better than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, they got to go up against it in practice all the time. So.
And that is going to do it for us here on Second and Short in our Week 3 Fantasy Football Friday episode of Second and Short. If you guys like what we're doing out here, please leave a like down below. It takes 1 second, shows a lot of appreciation, and it is the cheapest way to support our podcast. Also, be sure to send some comments down below on if you think we're going to be right on these predictions or if we're going to be wrong. And tell us who you think are your studs and duds and sleepers for Week 3 of the NFL season. If you guys want to listen to us on audio-only podcasts, please check us out on Spotify at Second and Short, as well as Google Podcasts and everywhere else that there are audio versions of anything.
Even like vinyl records and phonographs and stuff.
I think that we are starting to come out on vinyl, yes.
Go down to your local record store.
And click that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on all things we do. Again, we are pushing out 2 episodes every week. Mondays, we review the week. And Fridays, we prepare you for the weekend. And if you want to check us out on social media, you can also check us out at...
Check us out on Facebook, where we'll be updating every post. Twitter, we've got polls, posts, everything going on there. Follow us on there. And then follow us on Instagram, where we post like discussion points, news updates, updating our story and everything as well. So feel free to send us a DM on any platform, any day of the week, with any type of nudes that you want to send.
And thank you guys for listening. Y'all have a great night tonight.